They say one act of courage can change your life forever. For Ethan Cole, a struggling 24-year-old mechanic in a small American city, that act happened on a rainy Friday night. The night he took a bullet for a girl he didn't even know. But that girl was Sophia Bennett, the only daughter of one of the richest men in the state. The streets were quiet, wet from a light drizzle. Neon lights from Rosie's diner glowed across puddles like ripples of color. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried food filled the air. Ethan sat alone at a corner booth, hands still stained with grease, exhausted from another long day fixing cars for people who barely paid on time. He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes heavy but mind awake, thinking, as always, about what his life could be. He dreamed of building something big, a revolutionary engine design he'd been sketching for months. But dreams didn't pay rent. And in this small city, big dreams often died quietly. Then the doorbell above the diner rang, and she walked in. Sophia Bennett looked like she didn't belong here. Her cream-colored coat glistened from the rain, her perfume subtle but expensive. She scanned the room nervously before sitting 2 booths away from Ethan. He noticed her hands trembling as she set down her purse and phone. Something about her posture screamed trouble. Ethan wasn't the kind to meddle in other people's business, but her eyes caught him, scared, restless, like she was running from something she couldn't explain. He didn't know that at that very moment, trouble was already coming. The loud screech of tires cut through the calm. 2 men jumped out of a black SUV parked across the street. Before anyone could react, the diner's door swung open, masked men with guns. "Everybody down," one yelled. The waitress screamed. Coffee cups shattered. People dropped to the floor. Sophia froze, panic flooding her face. The shorter robbers spotted her expensive purse and smirked. "Hand over the bag." She hesitated. "Big mistake." He cocked the gun. "Now." Her voice cracked. "Please, it's not just." Before she could finish, Ethan stood up. "Hey," he shouted, hands raised. "You don't have to do this." The taller robber turned to him. "Sit down, hero. Unless you want to die." Ethan didn't move. "Just take the money. Leave her alone." The shorter one cursed. "Shut him up." The gun went off. A single deafening bang filled the diner. Sophia screamed. Ethan's body jerked backward as the bullet tore through his shoulder. He collapsed onto the cold tile, blood pooling fast. The robbers panicked, grabbed the cash, and bolted into the night. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the soft hum of the jukebox still playing an old country song. Then Sophia crawled across the floor, hands shaking, pressing her scarf against Ethan's wound. Tears blurred her vision. "Oh my God, you're bleeding. Stay with me." Ethan tried to smile, his voice weak. "Are you okay?" She nodded through tears. "Why would you do that?" "Didn't want to see anyone get hurt." His eyelids fluttered. "Guess I got bad timing." Then he went limp. Sophia screamed for help. Hours later, Ethan woke to the sound of beeping machines. His shoulder burned like fire, but he was alive. The room smelled of antiseptic. A nurse leaned over. "You're lucky," she said softly. "That bullet missed your heart by an inch." He blinked, trying to remember what happened. Then he saw her, sitting in the corner, her eyes red from crying. Sophia stood when she saw him wake. "You're awake," she whispered, voice trembling. I thought you wouldn't make it." Ethan tried to move, groaned in pain. "You that girl from the diner?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Sophia. My name's Sophia Bennett." Ethan forced a weak grin. "Ethan Cole. Panic. Part-time bullet magnet." She laughed softly through her tears. He didn't know why she cared so much, maybe guilt, maybe gratitude, but the way she looked at him, with both admiration and sadness, made something stir in his chest. Sometimes life introduces you to people in the strangest ways. A stranger one moment, a reason to live the next. Over the next few days, Sophia visited him every afternoon. She brought him food, sat beside his bed, and talked to him like they'd known each other forever. Ethan tried to hide his growing feelings, but it was impossible. There was something about her, graceful but humble, kind but broken in ways she never spoke about. She told him bits of her life. How her father, Richard Bennett, ran a massive real estate company, how her mother was always concerned with reputation, and how she often felt like she was trapped in a world made of gold but cold to the touch. Ethan listened, fascinated. So, you're basically royalty. She rolled her eyes. More like a prisoner with nice clothes. He smiled. Well, if it helps, you don't seem like one of them. That line stuck with her. Weeks passed. Ethan recovered faster than doctors expected. He still had pain, but seeing Sophia made it bearable. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hospital windows, she asked, "Why did you do it? Why risk your life for someone you didn't know?" He paused, staring at the floor. "Because I know what it's like to need help and have no one come." Sophia looked at him, her eyes soft. "That's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me." He chuckled. "You need better friends." She laughed, genuinely this time. It was the first time she'd felt safe in years. In a world where most people look away, a single act of courage can create a bond deeper than blood. Sometimes love doesn't begin with words, it begins with sacrifice. When Ethan was finally discharged, Sophia insisted on driving him home. Her car, a sleek black BMW, looked out of place in the rough part of town where Ethan lived. His workshop sat beside his small apartment, tools scattered everywhere, the faint smell of oil in the air. Sophia hesitated. "You live here?" Ethan smirked. "Hey, don't judge the grease palace. It's got personality." She laughed, shaking her head. "You're unbelievable." "Yeah, but you're smiling." "Shut up," she said, trying not to laugh again. From that day, they started seeing each other more often. Sophia would stop by the garage under the pretense of checking his wound, but really she just wanted to be around him. Ethan taught her how to fix small things, spark plugs, tires, and how to tell when an engine was lying to you. She was terrible at it, but he loved the way she tried. They'd sit on the hood of an old car, drinking cheap coffee, talking about life. She told him about her dreams, to travel, to start her own art gallery, to live free of her parents' control. He told her about his invention idea, a fuel-efficient engine design he'd been working on. "If I can finish it," he said, "it could change everything." She smiled. "Then I believe you will." That sentence became fuel for his soul. One night, as they walked by the riverside, Sophia stopped. The moonlight danced on the water. She turned to him and said, "You know what's funny? I met you because of a bullet. But now, I can't imagine not knowing you." Ethan stared at her, his heart thundering. "You don't have to imagine it." He leaned in, and for the first time, they kissed, slow, sincere, and inevitable. The sound of the river faded. The world disappeared. It's crazy how love finds you when you least expect it, when you're broken, bleeding, and have nothing left to offer but your heart. But love built on gratitude can either heal you or destroy you. For weeks, they were inseparable. Sophia told her parents she was helping a friend recover. She couldn't tell them the truth. Her mother, Margaret Bennett, would never approve. Margaret was a woman of pride and image. She measured people by their wealth, not their worth. So when she eventually found out, she exploded. "You're seeing a mechanic?" she yelled. "Sophia, have you lost your mind? What will people think?" Sophia stood her ground. "He saved my life, Mom." Margaret scoffed. "And now he's after your money, obviously." Sophia's eyes filled with anger. "He doesn't even know who you are. He's not like that." Margaret crossed her arms coldly. "And before your father finds out." Sophia left in tears. That night, she drove to Ethan's garage, heartbroken. He was under a car, working late as usual. When he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. "She found out, didn't she?" he asked quietly. Sophia nodded. "She hates you." He sighed, wiping his hands. "Can't say I'm surprised. I don't exactly scream, future son-in-law, material." "Don't joke about this," she snapped, then softened. "I told her I wouldn't leave you." Ethan stepped closer, cupping her face gently. "Sophia, I don't care what she thinks. We'll make our own path. I'll work harder. I'll build something real. You'll see." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "Promise me?" "I promise." They hugged tightly, two hearts beating against the odds. Love is easy when everything's perfect. But the real test begins when the world tells you it's impossible. That's when you find out if it's love or just a beautiful illusion. Months later, Ethan's life began to change. He filed a patent for his new engine design, got attention from investors, and started building a small company. Sophia was there through it all, cheering him on, proud and amazed. They planned to get married once he became stable enough. But fate, as always, had its own agenda. Margaret wasn't done. She pulled every string, every favor, every ounce of influence she had to make sure Ethan's business would never get off the ground. Loans mysteriously got rejected. Contracts disappeared. A potential investor backed out at the last minute. Ethan didn't know why everything suddenly crumbled, but he could feel something was wrong. Then came the worst part. Sophia stopped answering his calls. Days passed. Then weeks. Finally, he showed up at her mansion, only to be stopped by security. "Sir, Miss Bennett isn't available." "Tell her Ethan's here," he shouted. The guard looked away. "She doesn't want to see you." Ethan's heart shattered right there. He drove home in silence, tears burning his eyes. He took a bullet for her. He gave her his heart, his loyalty, his dreams. But in the end, love wasn't enough. That night, he sat alone in his workshop, staring at the ring he'd bought with every penny he had. He whispered to himself, "Guess even heroes don't get happy endings." Then he broke down. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the man who faced a gun without fear, cried like a child. But little did he know, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a story the world would never forget. Because that heartbreak would forge the fire that would one day make him a billionaire. And as for Sophia Bennett, the girl who let him go, her choices would soon haunt her for the rest of her life. The garage was quiet except for the hum of a single flickering bulb. Ethan sat on the cold floor, a small velvet ring box in his hand. The same hand that once caught a bullet now shook like it carried the weight of the world. He opened the box and stared at the silver band inside. He'd planned to propose under the city lights, maybe near the river where they'd shared their first kiss. Now that dream felt like a cruel joke. Rain tapped the roof above him like a slow, mocking applause. For days he didn't work, didn't eat, barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sophia's face, the way she smiled, the way she looked at him like he was enough. And now she was gone. He couldn't understand how love that deep could vanish overnight. But what he didn't know was that it hadn't vanished. It had been stolen. Margaret Bennett had orchestrated everything. She'd paid off Ethan's investor to pull out. She'd made sure his business credit was flagged. And when Sophia refused to cut him off, she threatened to destroy her father's reputation. So Sophia gave in. She ended it, believing she was protecting him from her mother's wrath. But she underestimated how much Ethan's heart could take before breaking. 3 weeks after the breakup, Ethan stood on the bridge overlooking the same river where he and Sophia had first kissed. Below, the water shimmered under the moonlight, cold and inviting. He leaned on the railing, breathing heavily. His thoughts twisted. What's the point? He thought. She's gone. My dream's gone. Maybe I was never meant for more than fixing other people's broken things. A tear slipped down his cheek, lost in the wind. He climbed halfway over the railing. The water looked peaceful from up here, too peaceful. Then he heard a voice behind him. Hey man, don't do that. Ethan turned. A stranger stood a few feet away, tall, mid-40s, wearing a baseball cap and holding a cup of coffee. His eyes were calm but firm. Whatever you're thinking, the man said, trust me, it's not worth it. Ethan's voice cracked. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. The man walked closer, placing the coffee on the rail. You'd be surprised. I lost my wife, my business, my best friend, all in 1 year. Ethan blinked. So how are you still here? The man smiled faintly. Because pain's just proof you still care. That means you're not done yet. He reached out a hand. Come on, let's get off this bridge. After a long pause, Ethan took his hand. That night saved him. The stranger's name was David Rourke, a retired engineer who used to run a small startup that built solar-powered tools before a fire destroyed everything he owned. He saw something in Ethan, the same hunger he once had. Over late-night coffees in the diner, they talked about inventions, engines, and second chances. "You've got ideas," David said one night, tapping Ethan's notebook full of sketches. "But ideas are like engines. They only run if you give them fuel." Ethan frowned. "Fuel costs money." "Not always," David replied. "Sometimes it's grit." That line hit Ethan harder than any bullet ever could. The next morning, he went back to work, really work. He cleaned the garage, fixed 2 cars before noon, and used the extra cash to buy parts for his prototype engine. Every day he tested, failed, adjusted, failed again. But each failure taught him something new. At night, when exhaustion crept in, he'd remember David's words, "Pain means you're not done yet." And he wasn't. The garage had changed. So had Ethan. He'd built a compact, fuel-efficient engine that could run twice as long on half the gas. When he started it for the first time and heard it hum perfectly, he laughed like a kid again. He uploaded a short demo video online. Within days, it went viral among tech enthusiasts. A week later, he received a call from a small clean energy company in Austin that wanted to buy his design. Ethan didn't sell it. He offered them a partnership instead. That was his first smart move. By the end of the year, his company, Coal Dynamics, had 3 employees, including David, who handled research, and a young coder named Mia, who managed logistics. They worked out of the same old garage, but the dream had finally taken form. Success doesn't come from miracles. It comes from moments when you're broken but choose to keep moving anyway. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Sophia's life looked perfect, on paper. After the breakup, her mother introduced her to Blake Harrington, a charming real estate investor from an elite family. He was tall, confident, wealthy, everything Margaret wanted for her daughter. At first, Sophia resisted. But Blake was persistent, patient, strategic. He made her laugh when she wanted to cry, showered her with gifts, and told her everything she wanted to hear. Within a year, they were engaged. The tabloids called it the merger of 2 dynasties. But deep down, Sophia knew something was missing. Every time she looked at Blake, she didn't see a future. She saw an escape from her mother's pressure. On her wedding day, she stood in front of the mirror, wearing a dress worth more than most houses, yet she'd never felt poorer. Her eyes drifted to the window, where rain pattered softly, just like the night she'd met Ethan. She whispered to herself, "I'm sorry." Back in his small office, Ethan watched a news notification pop up on his phone. Sophia Bennett marries real estate heir Blake Harrington. He stared at the photo, her in white, smiling beside her groom. His chest tightened. David walked in, holding coffee. "You okay?" Ethan forced a nod. "Yeah. Just history." David studied him for a moment. "History can hurt, but don't let it anchor you. Use it as your engine." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I plan to do." He turned the phone face down and went back to work. Months turned into years. Coal Dynamics grew from a garage startup into a legitimate company. Ethan worked 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping in the workshop, building, testing, perfecting. Investors began to notice. Then came a deal with a mid-sized manufacturer that catapulted his name into the tech world. By the time he turned 27, Ethan Cole was a millionaire, self-made, humble, and driven. But money never replaced what he'd lost. He dated occasionally, but every relationship felt shallow. His heart still carried a scar that no surgery could fix. Then, one afternoon, as he prepared to pitch a new prototype to investors, a familiar name appeared on his phone screen. It was Sophia. He froze. Life has a strange sense of timing. It gives you everything you thought you wanted only after you've learned to survive without it. Sophia's voice on the call was soft, almost hesitant. "I heard about your company. You did it, Ethan. You really did." He leaned back in his chair. "Took a while, but yeah, we're doing okay." There was a long silence before she whispered, "I miss you." He closed his eyes, pain rushing back. "Sophia, you're married." "I know. But I made a mistake." He hesitated. "It's too late for that, isn't it?" Her voice cracked. Maybe. But I had to tell you. He didn't reply. When the call ended, Ethan sat quietly for a long time, staring at the blueprint on his desk. The next morning, he doubled down on work. Faster, harder, stronger. Because love had once broken him. But ambition rebuilt him. And while Ethan's star rose higher than he ever imagined, Sophia's world slowly began to crumble, piece by piece. It started small. Blake's business deals began failing. One of his projects went bankrupt, then another. Sophia noticed he drank more, yelled more, cared less. When she tried to help, he snapped, "You wouldn't understand. You've lived off Daddy's money your whole life." She cried that night, not because of his words, but because she knew deep down, she traded love for luxury. And luxury was running out. Meanwhile, Ethan signed his first 8-figure deal with a major automotive company. Reporters called him the garage genius. He smiled for the cameras, but when he got home, he still ate noodles alone at his kitchen counter. Sometimes success feels hollow when you have no one left to share it with. But the universe wasn't done twisting their fates together just yet. 2 years later, coal dynamics had expanded nationwide. Ethan, now a billionaire in the making, was scheduled to speak at a clean energy conference in New York. As he walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. He began his speech with calm confidence, until he looked toward the front row. Sitting there, almost unrecognizable in a plain black dress and tired eyes, was Sophia Bennett Harrington. Their eyes met for the first time in years. She looked broken and desperate. And at that moment Ethan realized, the girl who once saved him from loneliness, now needed saving herself. The lights blinded Ethan for a second, but he couldn't look away. Sophia sat in the first row, clutching a small purse in both hands. Her eyes glistened with something that wasn't joy. He forced himself to keep speaking. And that's why clean innovation isn't just a business, it's a responsibility. The audience applauded. Cameras clicked. But all Ethan heard was the pounding in his chest. When the speech ended, reporters swarmed him. He shook hands, smiled, signed a few autographs, and then slipped quietly through a side door. Outside, in the marble-tiled hallway, he found her waiting. Sophia. She breathed his name like it hurt. Ethan. They stood there for a heartbeat too long, trapped in the silence of everything that had gone unsaid. "You look different," he said finally. "So do you." She tried to smile, but her eyes told the truth, dark circles, trembling fingers. "You're doing amazing. I've been following your work." He nodded once. "Thanks. How's?" He hesitated. "Blake?" Her gaze dropped. "That's complicated." They walked outside into the cold New York evening. Streetlights shimmered against wet pavement. Traffic hummed like a distant storm. "I didn't plan to come," she said. "I just needed to see you. To apologize." "For what? For leaving, or for calling when you did?" She winced. "Both." Ethan folded his arms. "You made your choice. I made my mother's choice." Her voice cracked. "And I've been paying for it ever since." A taxi splashed past, spraying icy water onto the curb. Sophia didn't flinch. She just kept talking, her words tumbling out like a confession she'd been holding for years. Blake lost everything. Investments, houses, gun. He started drinking. Then gambling. And when he finally hit bottom, he blamed me. Ethan listened silently, the city noise fading around them. "I tried to hold things together," she continued, "but my parents' company collapsed too. My father had a stroke last year. Mom disappeared into debt collectors and lawyers. And now," she gave a small, broken laugh, "now I don't even have a place to stay tonight." Ethan's jaw tightened. The girl who once had the world was now standing in the cold, clutching a purse that probably held all she had left. He took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere warm." They ended up in a small all-night diner, chrome counters, neon lights, and the smell of burnt coffee. It looked eerily like the one where Ethan had once sat with David years ago, trying to find a reason to live. Sophia wrapped her hands around the coffee mug for warmth. "You shouldn't be helping me," she whispered. "After everything I did." Ethan shrugged. You're human. We all mess up. She looked up sharply. You still believe that? I have to. It's how I survived. He leaned back, studying her. The once perfect socialite now looked fragile, humbled. There was something achingly real about her now, something he'd never seen when she lived behind diamond necklaces and designer walls. I don't expect forgiveness, she said softly. I just wanted you to know. I never stopped loving you. Ethan's fingers froze around his coffee cup. The words hit like a punch. He forced a steady breath. Sophia, I cared about you more than anything. But that chapter's over. A tear slid down her cheek. Is it? He didn't answer. A few days later, Ethan offered Sophia a temporary position at Coal Dynamics' outreach program, a quiet act of compassion. He told himself it was just to help her get back on her feet. But the team noticed. Mia cornered him in the lab one night. Boss, you sure this is a good idea? That woman's your past. Ethan adjusted his goggles. Everyone deserves a second chance. Yeah, Mia said dryly, but not everyone survives the first one. He smiled faintly. I'll survive. Yet he couldn't ignore the tension in his chest whenever Sophia entered the room. She was polite, hardworking, even brilliant with PR, but each glance between them stirred memories he'd buried under years of ambition. And slowly, against his better judgment, the walls he'd built began to crack. Weeks passed. Sophia worked quietly, staying late to organize charity partnerships for renewable energy education. One night Ethan found her asleep at her desk, surrounded by handwritten notes. He placed a blanket over her shoulders, then paused, noticing a small photo on the desk, her and him years ago, smiling in front of the garage. On the back she'd written, "For the man who taught me what real love looked like." He sighed, whispering to himself, "You really haven't changed, have you?" She stirred, half awake. "Ethan?" "Yeah." "Go back to sleep." She smiled faintly. "Thank you, for not giving up on me." He looked at her for a long moment. "I almost did," he murmured. 2 months later, tragedy struck again. David Rourke, Ethan's mentor, passed away quietly in his sleep. At the funeral, rain poured as if the sky itself was mourning. Ethan stood by the coffin, his voice low. "You saved me, old man. I'll keep your promise alive." Sophia stood beside him, holding his hand for the first time in years. "He'd be proud of you," she said. Ethan nodded. "He taught me the one thing success never gives you, perspective." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her. "That everything we build means nothing if we lose who we are building it for." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then maybe we still have something left to build." For a moment he almost believed it. But fate had other plans. 2 weeks later, while Ethan was negotiating a multi-billion-dollar merger, reporters burst into the conference room. "Mr. Cole, any comment on the investigation involving Sophia Bennett?" Ethan froze. "What investigation?" The headlines hit like thunder. Ex-socialite accused of embezzling funds from Coal Dynamics charity wing. He stormed into her office. "Tell me this isn't true." Sophia stood pale, trembling. "Ethan, I swear, I didn't take a cent. Blake did. He hacked my account to cover his debts." "Then why is your name on every transaction?" "Because he used me as his front. I was trying to fix it before it went public." Ethan's mind raced. "Do you have proof?" "I'm trying to get it." "Try harder," he said, voice sharp, before walking out. That night, Sophia collapsed on her apartment floor, sobbing. "Why does everything I touch fall apart?" 2 days later, he found the proof, emails showing Blake orchestrated the theft. Ethan could have buried the story quietly, but he chose to go public. In a televised statement, he cleared Sophia's name and handed the evidence to authorities. Blake was arrested. When reporters asked why he defended her, Ethan said simply, "Because forgiveness is more powerful than revenge." The line went viral. Coal Dynamics stock soared. Ethan's reputation as a visionary deepened, not just in technology, but in humanity. Sophia met him on the company rooftop that evening. Sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. "You didn't have to save me," she said quietly. Ethan smiled. "You once tried to save me too, just in a different way." She looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes. Then maybe this time, we get it right. He hesitated. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Her breath caught. What is it? He stepped back slightly. I'm getting married. The words crashed into her like lightning. To who? She whispered. Mia. For a long, endless moment, she couldn't speak. Her lips trembled. You love her? He nodded slowly. She stood beside me when no one else did. She reminds me what tomorrow looks like, not what yesterday was. Sophia turned away, tears spilling freely. I was your yesterday, wasn't I? He reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. You were my reason to become who I am. But I can't go back. Sometimes love's greatest act isn't holding on. It's knowing when to let go. The heart can forgive what it can't rebuild. Sophia watched him walk away under the fading light, his silhouette swallowed by the city he'd built from dust. She whispered to the wind, I hope she loves you half as much as I still do. The city lights flickered like stars, each one a reminder of choices, consequences, and second chances missed. Months later, Sophia moved to a quiet town upstate, volunteering at a shelter that helped single mothers. She no longer had wealth or fame, but she had peace. Meanwhile, Ethan and Mia married in a small ceremony, no press, no luxury, just honesty. After the vows, he looked toward the sky and whispered, Thank you, David. As the wind rustled through the trees, it almost sounded like a reply. Keep going, kid. He took a bullet for a helpless girl, not knowing she was the daughter of a millionaire. But life had a bigger bullet waiting. The kind you can't see, the kind called destiny. He lost everything, built himself again, and learned the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the richest thing you can have isn't money, or even love. It's peace with your past. They say time heals all wounds. But some scars just learn how to breathe. Ethan Cole stepped out of a private jet, wearing a charcoal gray suit and a look that carried the weight of survival. Cole Dynamics was no longer a small company, it was a global empire, with branches in 30 countries and partnerships with Tesla, NASA, and the Department of Energy. His inventions had changed the world. Solar engines that powered rural homes, electric vehicles that ran 1,000 miles without charge. He was now one of America's youngest billionaires. But success had its price. Mia, now his wife, waited by the car, her smile radiant yet tired. They'd just finished a world tour promoting Cole's latest innovation. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. Mr. Cole, how does it feel to be called the next Elon Musk? He smiled faintly. Feels like I still have a lot of work to do. They laughed and he waved before stepping into the car. But as the doors closed, his expression changed. The laughter faded. He stared out the tinted window, lost. Mia reached over, touching his hand. You okay? Yeah, he said quietly. Just thinking. About her. He didn't answer. In a small town 2 states away, Sophia worked at a modest community center, helping struggling mothers learn job skills. Her hair was shorter now, her clothes simple. But her eyes, once filled with luxury, now carried depth, humility, and quiet kindness. A little girl ran up to her, handing her a drawing. Miss Sophia, this is you. See? You're smiling. Sophia laughed softly. That's beautiful, sweetie. She hung the picture on the wall next to dozens of others. Crayon rainbows, stick figures, smiling suns. It wasn't the mansion she grew up in. But somehow, it felt more like home than anywhere else had. At night, she sometimes scrolled through news articles about Ethan. His speeches, his innovations, his foundation that built schools for poor kids. She always smiled, but sometimes tears followed. He became everything I prayed he'd be, she whispered once. Even if it wasn't with me. One rainy evening, fate crossed their paths again. Ethan was invited to a charity summit in Chicago, one of his foundation's biggest events. Sophia, now a volunteer representative for her town's shelter, was also invited to present a small grant proposal. Neither knew the other would be there. The hall buzzed with cameras and chatter. When Ethan entered, the room quieted. People whispered his name like a legend. Then he saw her, at the far end of the hall, setting up a small display about community programs. Their eyes met. 5 years. A million miles between them. And yet, in that instant, time folded like it never passed. Mia, standing beside him, followed his gaze, and froze. She knew that look. Sophia quickly turned away, pretending to focus on her work. But her hands trembled. Ethan excused himself from a group of CEOs and walked toward her. Sophia. She looked up. Her voice was soft, steady. Ethan. He smiled faintly. Didn't think I'd see you here. I could say the same. They both laughed, awkwardly, gently, like two ghosts remembering what it was like to be alive. Mia watched from across the room, her smile thin, her heart uneasy. Later that night, after the event ended, Ethan found Sophia sitting alone outside, the city lights reflecting in the puddles. You spoke well, he said, approaching. Those kids you help, they're lucky. Sophia smiled sadly. You were the one who taught me that helping people gives life meaning. He sat beside her on the bench. I heard about your work. You've changed lives, Sophia. She shook her head. No, Ethan. I'm just trying to fix what I broke in myself. The silence between them stretched, not awkward this time, but deep. Finally, she whispered, do you ever wonder what might have happened if I'd stayed? He looked up at the stars. All the time. But if you had, I wouldn't be who I am now. Maybe neither would you. She nodded slowly, tears glimmering. Maybe that's the cruel part, knowing something was real, but it belonged to another lifetime. Ethan smiled faintly. Then maybe we just needed that lifetime to build this one. She reached for his hand but stopped halfway. She's good for you, isn't she? Mia? He nodded. Yeah. She's steady. Keeps me grounded. Sophia forced a smile. Then take care of her. He looked at her one last time, memorizing every detail, the woman she'd become, not the girl she was. Then he stood. Goodbye, Sophia. Goodbye, Ethan. As he walked away, she whispered to herself, you deserved everything, Ethan, every single thing. When Ethan got back to the hotel, Mia was sitting by the window, eyes red. She was there, she said quietly. Yeah. And you talked to her? He sighed. Briefly. Do you still love her? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. He turned to her slowly. No, he said truthfully. But a part of me will always remember her. Mia's voice cracked. Then promise me something. Promise me you'll stop living in the past. He walked over, kneeling in front of her. I already did. He kissed her hand, and for the first time in years, he meant it. Back in her small town, Sophia received an envelope a week later. Inside was a check for $500,000, a donation from the Cole Foundation to expand her shelter. Attached was a handwritten note. For the girl who taught me that broken things can still be beautiful. Ethan. She pressed the note to her chest and sobbed, not from sadness, but release. At that moment, she realized something. She had spent years chasing forgiveness from someone else, when the real forgiveness she needed was from herself. Months later, Ethan stood before a university crowd, giving a talk about resilience. When I was 20, I thought love was everything, he said. When I was 25, I thought money was. But now I know, neither lasts forever. What lasts is who you become when both are gone. The audience was silent, hanging on his every word. He smiled. Don't chase wealth to prove your worth. Chase purpose, that's what survives the storm. Thunderous applause. As he walked off stage, Mia met him with a proud smile. You finally sound happy. He chuckled. Maybe I finally am. 10 years after the day he took that bullet, the world called Ethan Cole one of the greatest innovators of his generation. His company changed millions of lives, but what mattered most to him now wasn't the fortune. It was the legacy. He visited the shelter Sophia now ran, expanded, full of laughter and new beginnings. They hadn't spoken in years. She was in the garden with children, teaching them how to plant trees. He didn't go in. He just watched from afar, smiling. Mia joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. She looks happy, Mia said. She does, Ethan replied softly. That's all I ever wanted for her. They stood there quietly, the wind carrying children's laughter across the air. Ethan turned to Mia. You ready to go? She smiled. Always. As they walked away, the camera lingered on the shelter sign. The Bennett Home for Renewal, sponsored by Cole Dynamics. He took a bullet for a helpless girl, not knowing she was the daughter of a millionaire. But fate had bigger plans, to teach him that love isn't measured by wealth, but by endurance. She lost him because she listened to pride. He found peace because he listened to pain. And in the end, both learned that some hearts don't have to end up together. To still be forever connected. Never look down on someone because they're struggling. Tomorrow might make them unstoppable. Love built on pressure will collapse. Love built on respect will endure. Pain can break you, or it can build you. The choice is yours. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Sometimes it means moving forward without hate. The richest people aren't those with the most money, but those who've made peace with their past. Ethan Cole stood before the glass wall of his penthouse office, the city lights stretching below like veins of molten gold. He had built this empire from the ashes of heartbreak and poverty. Cole Innovations was now a global powerhouse, its name etched on skyscrapers, its technology shaping the future. But tonight, the view that once fueled his pride felt distant. For the first time in years, he felt uneasy. Something was off. The numbers, the deals, the people around him. The smiles had become too rehearsed. The board meetings too quiet. Even his right-hand man Victor Hale, the friend who'd stood by him since the company's early days, had grown colder, more secretive. Victor wouldn't betray me, Ethan muttered to himself, his reflection staring back at him, expression unreadable. But the truth had a way of seeping through cracks, and the cracks were spreading. The following week, a storm hit, not the kind that lashes streets with rain, but one that tears through reputations. Cole Innovations was accused of manipulating defense contracts, the kind of scandal that could end a company overnight. Ethan was blindsided. What the hell is this? He barked, slamming the morning paper on the conference table. The headline screamed, Tech Titan under fire for fraud. Victor sat across from him, too calm. It's being exaggerated, he said coolly, avoiding Ethan's eyes. We can spin this. Spin this. Ethan shot back. Victor, our investors are pulling out, the stock's crashing, and the SEC is calling. What did you do? Victor's jaw tightened. What I had to. You were holding this company back with your morals. I made a few moves to secure our future. You mean your future? Silence. Then Victor smirked, a cruel, satisfied twist of the lips. You really thought you could run a billion-dollar empire with idealism and sentiment? You're a fool, Ethan. For a second, Ethan couldn't breathe. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound he'd ever known, deeper than Sophia's rejection years ago, deeper than any bullet. This was a man he'd trusted with his dreams. He took a step forward, voice low. You used me. Victor shrugged. I built you. Don't forget that. I cleaned up your messes, made your name shine. You were just the face, the sob story investors loved. But this. He gestured to the empire around them. This was my doing. Ethan's fists clenched. Get out. You'll regret this, Victor sneered. When they drag your name through the mud, remember, I warned you. He walked out, leaving behind a silence so heavy it seemed to press against Ethan's chest. Within days, everything collapsed. Cole Innovations stock plummeted 80%. Partners withdrew. The media tore him apart. The government launched investigations. Reporters camped outside his home, his company, his life. Investors who once begged to work with him now pretended they'd never heard his name. But Ethan didn't run. He faced it head-on, like he always had. He sat through hearings, lawsuits, and interviews. He watched board members turn on him and friends vanish overnight. The weight of it all nearly broke him. One night, as rain streaked the city windows, he sat alone in his office, empty bottles on the desk, documents scattered. He stared at a photo, a younger him and Sophia at a charity gala, before everything changed. Funny, he murmured. Even when I was poor, I never felt this empty. Meanwhile, Sophia Bennett, now Sophia Anderson, watched the news from her lavish but cold mansion. Her husband, Jonathan Anderson, the once celebrated millionaire, had recently declared bankruptcy after a string of failed investments. The fortune that once made her mother proud was gone. She saw Ethan's face on the screen, older, sharper, but still carrying the same fire in his eyes. He looked broken, yet somehow unyielding. A pang of guilt twisted her heart. "He doesn't deserve this," she whispered. Her husband looked up from the couch, scoffing. "You still care about that guy?" Sophia turned to him, eyes icy. "At least he earned his success. You inherited yours and threw it away." Jonathan rolled his eyes. "Watch your tones, Sophia. You're lucky I kept you around." That night, Sophia sat awake, staring at old messages she never sent, photos she never deleted. She remembered the man who took a bullet for her, the man who'd once loved her without condition. The next morning, she made a decision. A week later, Ethan was summoned to a meeting by someone he never expected. When he walked into the quiet downtown cafe, he froze. Sophia sat there, waiting, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears, eyes filled with something between regret and hope. "Ethan," she breathed. "It's been a long time." He stared for a moment, unsure whether to speak or turn and leave. "What do you want, Sophia?" "I want to help." He laughed bitterly. "Help? You left me when I had nothing. You crushed me when your mother told you I wasn't enough. And now you want to help?" Her eyes welled up. "I know. I made a mistake, the biggest of my life. But this isn't about us. Victor, he's working with foreign investors to bury you for good. He leaked false data, laundered funds in your company's name. I have proof." Ethan's heart pounded. "How do you know?" "I used to work with one of his partners. I found the files. If we can expose them, you can clear your name, maybe even rebuild." He studied her face, the sincerity, the tremor in her voice. She wasn't lying. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of something he thought he'd lost, hope. They spent weeks working together in secret. Long nights in dimly lit rooms, tracing transactions, connecting dots, collecting evidence. It was like rewinding time. The way she smiled when she cracked a lead, the way he encouraged her when things got tough. Old feelings resurfaced, not the naive love of their youth, but something deeper, tempered by pain and time. Finally, they had enough to expose Victor and his accomplices. But Victor caught wind of it before they could go public. That night, as Ethan left the office, a black car screeched to a halt beside him. Two men stepped out. Before he could react, they grabbed him, forcing him into the car. When he woke up, he was tied to a chair in a dark warehouse, face to face with Victor. "I told you you'd regret crossing me," Victor hissed. "You couldn't just disappear, could you?" Ethan spat blood. "You think you'll get away with this?" "I already have," Victor grinned. "The files you and your little girlfriend found? Deleted. She's probably next." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Don't you dare touch her." Victor leaned closer. "You always were too emotional. That's why you'll lose." But Ethan wasn't the man he once was. He'd been broken before, and every time, he came back stronger. Using a shard of glass from the floor, he cut his ropes, lunged forward, and knocked Victor off balance. A fight broke out, brutal, desperate. Ethan took hit after hit, but he didn't stop. He fought for his name, his company, and for Sophia. Just as Victor reached for a gun, sirens blared outside. Police stormed in, led by Sophia, holding the drive with all the evidence. Victor froze. Ethan, bruised and bleeding, looked at her with disbelief. "How did you?" "I backed everything up on a hidden server," she said, voice trembling. "I wasn't going to lose you again." Victor was arrested on the spot. Weeks later, headlines read, "Ethan Cole cleared of all charges. Cole Innovations restored under new leadership." The world that turned its back on him now begged for interviews, deals, partnerships. But Ethan wasn't chasing wealth anymore. He'd seen what power could do. Sophia visited him one last time at his new office, a smaller, quieter space overlooking the same skyline where it all began. "I guess this is goodbye," she said softly. He looked at her, the woman who'd once broken his heart, then saved his life. "You didn't have to come back. But you did. That means something." Tears glimmered in her eyes. I just wish I'd realized what mattered sooner. Ethan smiled faintly. Life has a way of teaching us, sometimes the hard way. As she turned to leave, he added quietly, "Take care, Sophia." She paused at the door, whispered, "You too, Ethan," and walked away, disappearing into the crowd outside, leaving behind a bittersweet silence. That night, Ethan stood on the rooftop, the wind brushing against his face. The city pulsed below, alive, endless. He thought about everything: the betrayal, the loss, the comeback, and the woman who'd come full circle. He whispered to himself, "Sometimes, pain isn't punishment, it's preparation." And with that, he walked back inside, ready to build again, not for money, not for revenge, but for purpose. The boy who once took a bullet for a helpless girl had become a man who could withstand the world's fire and still choose to forgive. The world had finally gone quiet for Ethan Cole. Months after clearing his name and rebuilding from the ruins, Ethan stood before the grand opening of the Cole Foundation, a place dedicated to helping underprivileged youth chase their dreams in technology and innovation. The same city that once turned its back on him now stood applauding. But this time, he wasn't chasing applause, he was chasing purpose. "Success isn't about what you build for yourself," he told the crowd, voice steady. "It's about what you build for others." The audience rose to their feet in applause. But behind the confident smile, Ethan carried something deeper: peace. For years, he'd fought battles for validation, love, and revenge. Now he fought for meaning. Life, however, had taken a cruel turn for Sophia Bennett. Her husband, Jonathan Anderson, had fled the country after a massive tax scandal left them bankrupt. Their mansion was repossessed. Her mother, Margaret, who once looked down on everyone without wealth, fell ill from stress and guilt. Sophia now lived in a modest apartment, far from the glittering world she once flaunted on social media. The woman who had once dined with senators now took the bus to work at a local bookstore. She didn't complain, she couldn't. She knew this was life's way of teaching her the lesson she had refused to learn years ago. One evening, as she was closing up the shop, she saw a familiar face on the TV mounted on the wall: Ethan Cole, standing on stage, launching a new project for renewable energy. His foundation was being hailed as the future of American innovation. The crowd cheered. Ethan smiled. But what caught Sophia's attention wasn't his success, it was the calm in his eyes. He looked complete. She stood frozen for a while, her reflection faintly visible on the TV glass. The tears came before she could stop them. "You deserve it," she whispered. "You always did." Weeks later, Sophia decided she couldn't live with the weight of her regret anymore. She needed closure, not to win him back, but to tell him what she should have said years ago. She waited outside his foundation's headquarters, heart pounding. The moment he stepped out, dressed sharply in a charcoal suit, she froze. He looked different, older, wiser, confident. But his eyes, those same eyes that once looked at her with so much love, still held warmth. "Ethan," she said softly, turned, surprised. "Sophia." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed around them, but between them, there was only silence, a silence filled with everything left unsaid. "I heard about what you're doing," she said finally. "The foundation, the scholarships, it's beautiful." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. I just wanted to give back. People gave up on me once. I don't want that to happen to others." She looked down, twisting her hands nervously. "You've become everything I knew you could be." "I'm proud of you, Ethan." He smiled gently. "You always believed in me once. That counts for something." Her voice broke. "I didn't believe enough. I let fear and pride decide for me. And I lost everything that mattered." He looked at her, not with anger or bitterness, but with the quiet compassion of someone who had made peace with his past. "Maybe that's how it had to happen," he said. "So we could both learn what really matters." She wiped her tears. "Do you ever think about us?" He hesitated. "Sometimes. But not with regret anymore." Sophia forced a smile. "Is there someone else?" A subtle light flickered in his eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "Her name's Claire. She was there when everything fell apart. She believed in me when no one else did." Sophia nodded, fighting the sting in her chest. She's lucky. Ethan shook his head. I'm the lucky one. I learned that love isn't about timing or status, it's about the soul. Claire saw mine when it was buried under pain. There was a pause. Then Sophia whispered, I'm happy for you. And for the first time in years, she meant it. Later that week, Sophia visited her mother at the small retirement home on the city's outskirts. Margaret was frail now, her once commanding voice reduced to a whisper. Did you see him? Margaret asked as Sophia walked in. Sophia nodded, sitting beside her bed. Yes, Mom. He's doing well. Better than ever. Her mother sighed, eyes misty. I told you to leave him. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. Sophia took her hand. We both were. Margaret looked away, guilt heavy in her expression. If I could go back, I'd tell you to follow your heart, not my pride. Sophia squeezed her hand gently. It's too late to change the past. But not too late to learn from it. Tears slipped down Margaret's cheeks. I just hope he forgave us. Sophia smiled faintly. He did. Months passed. Ethan's foundation became one of the most successful nonprofit initiatives in the country. He expanded into schools, tech hubs, and global outreach programs. But despite his success, he never forgot where he came from. One morning, as he prepared for a charity event, Claire entered his office, a gentle smile on her lips. Big day, she teased. Ethan looked up from his notes and grinned. Always. She walked over and straightened his tie. You still get nervous? Only when you're watching, he joked. Claire laughed softly, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. I'm proud of you, Ethan. Not for what you've built, but for who you've become. He held her gaze for a long moment. You're the reason I didn't give up. Claire kissed his cheek. No, you're the reason you didn't give up. I just reminded you who you were. Outside, photographers waited. As Ethan and Claire stepped into the light, flashes went off, but this time, he didn't feel the weight of fame or the fear of losing it. He felt gratitude. Meanwhile, Sophia found a quiet sort of redemption in her new life. She volunteered at the same foundation Ethan had built, anonymously behind the scenes. She helped organize mentorship programs, coordinate donors, and support kids who reminded her of the person she used to be, hopeful, dreaming, unbroken by the world's expectations. Every once in a while, she would see Ethan from afar, shaking hands, smiling, talking to young innovators. She never approached him again. She didn't need to. Seeing him thrive was enough. And though her heart still carried the ache of what could have been, she learned to turn that pain into purpose. One evening, as she locked up the volunteer center, a young girl stopped her. Miss Sophia, the girl said shyly, Mr. Cole told us that sometimes life gives you second chances, but not in the way you expect. What do you think he meant? Sophia smiled softly. He meant that sometimes the second chance isn't to get back what you lost, it's to become someone worthy of what you once had. The girl nodded thoughtfully. That's deep. Sophia chuckled. He's a deep man. Years later, Ethan stood at the groundbreaking ceremony of a new tech campus built entirely for underprivileged students. Claire stood beside him, her hand resting in his. The mayor praised his innovation, the press hailed his vision, but Ethan barely heard them. His eyes wandered to the crowd, to the volunteers, the students, the dreamers. And somewhere near the back he saw her. Sophia. She was older now, graceful still, her eyes calm. She smiled, not with sadness, but with peace. Ethan nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement between two souls who had shared a lifetime of lessons. The applause thundered, but in that brief moment, it was just them, two people who had learned that love, loss, and destiny all have their place in the story of life. That night, as the city lights flickered below, Ethan stood on his balcony, reflecting on his journey. He whispered to himself, sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones that free you the most. He looked at Claire, who joined him, her hand slipping into his. Thinking again? She teased. Always, he smiled. About how far we've come. She leaned against him. You deserve every bit of it. He shook his head. No one deserves happiness. You build it. brick by brick, with forgiveness, patience, and love. She smiled. Then you built a masterpiece. He kissed her forehead as the stars burned above the skyline. And somewhere across town, Sophia sat by her window, watching the same stars. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was simply thankful for the lessons, the memories, and the chance to start again. Life had taken everything she thought she wanted and replaced it with everything she truly needed: peace, humility, and the understanding that love isn't always about possession. Sometimes, it's about appreciation. She whispered, "Good night, Ethan." And for the first time in forever, her heart was quiet. In a world obsessed with wealth, status, and perfection, Ethan's story reminds us that the greatest victories aren't about how high you rise, but about how deeply you learn. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And love, in its truest form, never dies. It just changes shape to fit the lessons life teaches us. The boy who once took a bullet for a helpless girl had grown into a man who took every wound, every betrayal, and turned them into light. And that, more than all the money in the world, was his greatest success.